So my name is Michiel Gerritse. I'm an assistant professor here at the Erasmus School of Economics. I'm also the director of the Urban Port and Transport Economics program. I did live all my life in the Netherlands with a few academic exceptions. So I lived in London and Milan for a while, which gives you a bit of contrast. What I like about the Netherlands, mostly the people that I have around here, so my friends and family. My hobbies, apart from economics, hard to have hobbies of course, but I like to do sports mostly. So recently I've been playing quite a bit of tennis. Other than that, I really like cooking and eating as well. I have a ton of favorite dishes, but Italian is generally my favorite, also because I've lived there for a while probably, and I try to understand the local cuisine a bit. As a student, honestly, I didn't really see the point of economics in the first years. So I was more busy making friends, trying to figure out life, doing sports and so. And I think in my second year, I sort of realized that I need to set myself goals or deadlines. And I decided to do extra courses because with the pressure of having extra exams, I found myself willing to work a little harder. I think in the fourth or fifth year or so, I really started to see the point of economics. I started enjoying it and started getting really into it. So, how I prepare for lectures, I honestly never try to over-prepare, but then I try to just talk to the students and try and explain the material in a pretty natural way, because I feel learning is also a social thing, and if I just memorize some talk, then I don't think it's going to land super well. As I said, I'm an international economist by training, but as I was studying international economics, I realized like a lot of this is trade, but a lot of this trade is done by firms, and firms have a way of organizing themselves, right? They choose maybe to ship their product somewhere or maybe to invest in a new plant. And so these firms are also location choices. And I think there's a big coherent theory of international trade and location choices. Actually, the paper I'm working on right now, there's this question that also has to do a lot with logistics and globalization, how they play out, because there's this big debate in the US especially. So when China entered the World Trade Organization, all of a sudden there was a new big player on the world market. And there's a big literature that shows that in the US, people who worked in industries that competed with whatever China was producing, they lost their jobs, and as a consequence, we saw all sorts of adverse effects, right? This drove arguments of why Donald Trump eventually got elected and things like that. But there was one thing that we, a co-author and I, thought was really interesting. So if you take a container from Shanghai and ship it to the port of Houston, it costs you about $1,000 to $1,500. If you want to ship something from Shanghai to Denver, you would largely take the same route, right? So the container leaves Shanghai, gets to the port of Houston, you load it onto a truck, and then it spends like 1,500 kilometers on the truck or the train to get to Denver. So that increases the price from about $1,500 to $5,000. How on earth can people in Denver then suffer from, China being a global player? And we find that the places right next to the ports of international trade, they suffer hugely from the rise of China. But once you move away from these ports, actually the whole effect vanishes, right? And I think this is also important in Rotterdam, where we're basically right next to one of the biggest ports in the world, which, it tells us something that the way we deal with globalization should be probably completely different if you're in Rotterdam compared to when you're a city basically far away from the ocean. My advice, if you want to study spatial international economics and want to pursue a career in that, we're dealing more and more with really big data sets. So I think it's really important to have a hang of that, to have the skills. But at the same time, I think if you know how to handle big data, or if you know how to think in a very model-based way or a systematic way, that doesn't bring you there, because you need to understand the context. You need to have a grasp of how ports work, or how people choose where to live in cities, before you can start meaningfully applying all these methodologies and mining all this big data.